Those who have been in a coma, what was it like? I was in medically induced coma for about a week. The coma itself is not much to talk about. There is just a gap in your memory, even from before it happened. I don't even remember the accident that brought me there in the first place. Waking up from it is much different story though. Since I was fully dosed by painkillers and sedatives and whatnot, I was basically high as kite. And since the trauma I suffered was very serious, my brain constructed very stressful, vivid nightmares I remember to this day. Do you think your brain was trying to wake you up? I'm not really sure. It was more like the shallow sleep just before you wake, when you're semi-aware of your surroundings, but you're also half dreaming. The former made me realize I'm in the hospital and that something bad happened. Could not figure out what though. The latter combined with the said meds made the experience utterly terrifying. But yes, at some moment I realized that I need to wake up, but I didn't know how. Also, there were several timelines concurrently going on in my head, as crazy as it may sound, and I could not determine which one is the correct one to wake into. I had a motorcycle wreck a few years ago. Someone texting blew a stop sign and 8 ended up T-boning them. Not sure if coma is the correct term, but I was definitely unconscious for 2 days. Honestly just felt like the worst. Least refreshing nap in the history of naps. Had the wreck on a Sunday. Woke up sometime Tuesday afternoon/evening and asked if the bike was okay. It wasn't. I was in a coma for 3 days following a serious cycling accident. Medically induced. I woke up with zero recollection of why I was there or what was said while I was out. It is easily the scariest situation I've found myself in, but I can't say I remember it. I woke up to my mom and dad in the hospital with me and my body in traction of some sort, and that was way scarier to me. There was a kid named Martin Pistorius who fell into a coma for 12 years, but his mind woke up 2 years into it. However, he was unable to speak or move, and everyone believed he was a vegetable at best. This wasn't the case. His mind was fully there. For over a decade he was mistreated in facilities that played Barney repeats every single day for years without him being able to look away. True mental torture. He was also physically and sexually abused on top of that. At one point he couldn't stop throwing up, so the nurses tube fed him his own vomit. His parents were unaware of all this and tried adapting the best they could. In some of the lowest moments he remembers his mother telling him she wishes he would just die, yet all he could feel was compassion for how she felt. Eventually someone who cared enough realized he was responsive enough and got him the help he needed, and now he has a wife and kids. Talks like Stephen Hawking and is a computer programmer. Really shows how you can still emerge from the deepest, darkest places of life. If anyone is wondering, it happened to him due to cryptococcal meningitis. Fungus covered his brain and spinal cord. The disease comes from soil with infected bird droppings being inhaled. One day he was just an innocent 12-year-old playing outside, only for his life to be changed because of simply breathing in some kicked up dirt. Glad he came out on top in the end. His TED Talk link. B/WD191 Afrask. Locked in syndrome. I can't think of anything more terrifying. I've had this happen, but only for about 2 hours. It was extremely strange and terrifying. Eyes open, unable to move limbs or talk, shout, etc. Not a nice feeling. My wife was in a coma for about a month. At first I didn't bring the kids up because of how she looked, but in the 3rd week her color was closer to normal and there was less stuff going on as she was pretty stable compared to the first 2 weeks. In a hoe. I had told the kids that while mom wasn't responsive there was a chance could she hear us, so they should be as brave as they can and sound as happy as they can. I described to them everything I thought that might spook them, from the tubes and wires to things beeping randomly and ERs and nurses coming and going. They were awesome. Even in the initial shock at seeing her with a ventilator they were vocally loving. Hugged and patted, held her hand, etc. We sat in the room a while and just talked. At one point I asked the kids what their favorite vacation was. Instead of our Disney and Universal Studios trips they both agreed it was the road trip we took from Vegas down to Arizona. Driving all over and seeing all the incredible sights. We talked about rides and amusements in Vegas, then Hoover Dam, the Grand Canyon, The painted desert. Cave dwellings. Petrified forest. Silly road stops. A cheap motel we stayed in Flagstaff. We laughed and cried, just a little. It was as nice as it could be. They kissed her goodbye saying see you soon. My wife heard it all. But in a hallucinatory way. She now has, to this day, near 10 years later, a vivid memory of a second Arizona vacation she went on with us. She even asked me early on after she woke up if we had gone on a vacation recently. Her mind went through every detail we talked about and even added onto it as if it all actually happened and the memories of it are as real as any. I was in a coma for almost 3 months and lost all memory from her a few hours before the coma until waking up in a different hospital. I had a few vague dreams of people standing very close and shouting at me how I would be okay. I later met my chief surgeon, several operations while I was out, and nurses, and while I didn't recognize any of them, their voices were very strongly familiar. Good on you priming kids that a patient in a coma may be able to hear, even if they cannot react. The mind's a pretty amazing thing. 10 days I don't remember anything about. Not sure if it is a blessing or a curse. Hit by a drunk driver. My wife and I lived. Our daughter didn't. To me that stuff on TV where the part wakes up and everything goes back to normal is bullshit. When I woke up I was in a conversation with another part. Air Force had sick bays, not individual rooms. I can only compare it to a computer. I had been hung in an update and then flicker. New screen. I had woken up several days earlier, but nothing stayed with me. My wife says I was paranoid that they were putting acid in my eye. Because I was tripping. I was hostile and aggressive. I read the medical records. They kept me restrained for a couple of days after I hit a nurse. I started acting normal, so they moved me from my ICU to the sick bay. The blessing is forgetting 10 days of some pretty intense pain. I was broken in a lot of places and bruised in all the rest. Never knew you could bruise some of them. That freaked me out. The curse was I wasn't there when my wife needed me most. There is that tinge of guilt that she faced that grief alone for 10 days. I know. Couldn't be helped. Not my fault. But live through it and tell me how it feels. I was in one for like 2 weeks. I would not wish it on anyone. For me I was in a long dream. I did realize I was asleep for a long time. I was still able to feel and hear, which was interpreted into my dream. Example, my hands were restrained, so I would not pull out any tubes and my dream was that I was being held in a prison. I've tried to explain it a few times, but honestly it's life changing. It's one of those experiences that are almost impossible to explain, but you're a different person afterwards. Not just because of the brain damage on my part or the physical therapy you need to learn basic motor functions. It's like visiting another realm of reality. It's like visiting another realm of reality the Russians made like a movie about, like going in coma and visiting another realm where the time moves slower like 100th of real time. I recommend to watch, it's really cool. My brother was in a coma. He doesn't remember the weeks/months leading up his accident or the months following his waking. He had a very severe TB. I was in coma because I fell 15 meter and broke nearly all of the bones in my back, and it was horrible. When I woke up I thought the nurses were torturing me and that I need to escape. I started hallucinating a lot and couldn't even understand that I'm in hospital. The biggest problem were my dreams. I thought I was a time traveler or some kind of god. I thought I was shot by the police and other shit. I still have flashbacks to this day, and it is no fun. But I'm getting therapy to deal with it, and I could watch pun in my dreams, so yeah. It was confusing and horrible at the same time. 0/10ths would not do again. What kind of pun? Lesbian pun edit. THX for the award. This is my first and it actually means a lot to me, so thank you. A kid I went to middle school with spent 5 months in a medically induced coma waiting for a new heart. He said that in dream time it was equivalent to several years during which he could fly and was stronger, but also had to fight clowns with chainsaws. He was aware that he was in a coma, but couldn't really do anything about it, obviously. Interestingly enough, there was a point in this dream where he was tasked with doing something that was literally impossible, and he was somehow able to do it. In the real world, I believe medical professionals at one point said it was literally impossible for him to recover. I'm not sure what health complications were happening during this time, or if this was pre or post transplant. Close bracket. Not a coma, but I'll just classify this as sleeping in odd places, not on purpose. I blacked out for quite a bit of time due to heat stroke. Apparently I was just passed out on the ground. I woke up feeling a warm tingling sensation. I honestly thought I was just in bed, but no, I was in the middle of a shopping center with my brother standing over me laughing. Got hit by a truck. I was in a coma for 4 days. It felt like a power nap, but in the hospital. Edit. I was worried. When I woke up, I had no idea where or why I was. Like before you were born. I get this on LSD. Well, how much did you take? Did you black out? I got in a dirt bike accident during the summer between grade 8 and 9. I don't remember much about the day or two before. Just kind of flashbacks like a dream. I woke up in the hospital a day or so later. To me it was like sleeping. All of a sudden I woke up. I did have some memory loss though, which lasted for a couple of hours. This memory loss was different than just not remembering the day or so before. I woke up, and although I knew my parents and everything, I didn't remember the previous few years of school, like graduating from grade 8. It was a full-on panic attack. Though I was going to have to repeat a couple grades, and then essentially I was mentally handicapped. This was in the 80s, so I didn't use that exact term. Everything did come back. But that hour after waking up still haunts me. It was odd and very interesting. I think you'll like this answer. It may be unique. I was playing a lot of Halo 4 at the time, and I also had that weird Android Galaxy Live wallpaper. So when I was knocked out for over a month, I saw that Galaxy spinning around as if it were a Halo 4 loading screen. And what's really weird is I remember that odd thing being at the bottom right of the screen that said, "Don't turn off your Xbox 360 console," honestly being there too. Kinda weird and cool. IDK. I was in that area of my mind for about 30 seconds, and then I woke up. How have you found this level so far? I was in a coma for 2 hours after a car accident. It just flashes, then blackness for what feels like a few seconds, then you wake up. It was dark. I was in one for 4 months a couple of years ago, and it didn't feel like 4 months. Just like a long sleep, with the occasional memory of my mom crying or begging me to wake up. I remember this vividly. I woke up in the hospital, surrounded by my friends and family, and the first thing I remember asking was, I should have posted this with the serious tag. Listen here, you little shitty. In 2016 I was in a coma from March 31st to May 5th. Then half awake for another month after that. It was like the longest, scariest dream of my life. I was medically induced by a fentanyl drip for about a week at first, and let me tell you, fentanyl is a demon. Wacky dreams about fighting corrupt hospital officials. So my brain knew where I was. They didn't think I'd ever talk or walk again. But in the hospital bed I laughed at an episode of that 70s show, and inclined every day after, putting me at about 85% health overall these days. But pretty much an average guy. Oh, it was a head injury. Had a seizure in the bathroom that made me fall onto the sink. I've been in 2 medically induced comas. Both times it was like being in a dreamless sleep. I was unaware of time pacing, which was weird, waking up and then being told it was Thursday when last I remembered it was Monday. I don't remember anyone talking to me, but my mum said she spoke to me every day, and the only time I would react was when she mentioned a certain name. She said whenever she said his name my eyes would flutter. Other than that there was no response at all. It's also very confusing the first 30 minutes at least, as the drugas are still wearing off. You're intubated, have a nasogastric tube for feeding, a central line for drugas, and a catheter for urine. All of this is usually removed, which isn't pleasant, and you're still trying to wake up and make sense of your situation. I would say not one of the top 10 experiences to have before you die. It felt like a series of dreams. I think I was a detective at one point, also a plane pilot and a spaceship captain. You're in a coma right now. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. Like this video and this good boy will be your mailman forever. We are Redditation. And we Redditate every day. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. Until then, check another video. Or don't. Either way, have a wonderful day you magnificent people.